Hello, my darlings, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Mariya. This channel is about spirituality and all things energy. Please subscribe below so we can be YouTube buddies. I figured I would take advantage of the month of August and record a video for you around Sirian Starseeds, starseeds that hail from Sirius. It is the month of the 8-8 Lionsgate portal that is connected to the star of Sirius, and I figured, what better month to do it? Besides, I know that a lot of you folks watching me are curious about the topic, the subject. Enough of you are starseeds yourself, so I thought we would dive in. The rest of the video I'm going to be doing with my eyes closed because I will be deep in my channel and I want no visual distractions so I can be as clear and precise as possible for you guys. We're going to get started in just a moment. A lot can be said on the topic of Sirian Starseeds. Let's begin by saying that Sirian Starseeds are some of the most pivotal species of planet Earth. These are the species that have been around for a while, way longer than Homo sapiens, some of them. And as such, certain species that hail from Sirius are quite foundational to the consciousness of Gaia, and they're quite foundational to the ecosystem of Gaia. I am, of course, referring a lot to the marine animals, specifically the whale and the dolphin population of Earth. But these two massive species, masterful species, very evolved species, are not the only one hail from Sirius. In fact, there is a lot in the ocean that hails from Sirius. Some of the species of algae come from Sirius, for example. And of course, we know algae really does impact the oceans quite a lot. Plenty of starfishes, some jellyfishes come from Sirius as well. A lot of water elementals originate from Sirius, including the Milazines. So the Milazines and the mermaids originally came from Sirius. Now, not every marine animal, of course, comes from the star, but there is a lot of DNA that was originally shared by the royal house of Sirius with the consciousness of Gaia, with the planet Earth, in order to create a certain level of vibration here. And in order to create a sanctuary or a safe space for what became known as the melting pot, the galactic melting pot, quite a number of diverse starseeds have grown roots here on planet Earth, including from different camps galactically, from camps that historically don't get along. And it is, or has been, a pretty wild experiment, planet Earth. And of course, before these wild galactic experiments can take place, certain stars or certain systems take it upon themselves to create an ecosystem that would enable to hold diversity in a very gracious manner, or as gracious a manner as that diversity, including all the clashing that could take place, needs to have in order to exist. And so, of course, the whales are the original Sirian starseeds that started calling planet Earth home. Every whale is such a pivotal being still today to the consciousness of planet Earth that their value cannot be overestimated. Every whale is a pillar. Whales quite naturally are receiving star codes on a daily basis. And in a way, they are like doctors to the planet. And it has been challenging for them to administer the healing to planet Earth at the frequency that the healing is now required, because the ecosystem of planet Earth has largely been destabilized by humanity. And so whales are actually really good at receiving Sirian star codes through their crown chakras, funneling that through their bodies, amplifying that frequency, and then traveling long distances to administer that healing where it is required, specifically into the grids of the planet Earth. So whales are original grid workers of the Earth. Dolphins are a bit different. Dolphins are harmonizing the energies through the frequency of their hearts. So they come with pre-installed higher hearts. And as such, they have never been really constrained by lower heart energies of the earth. They, from that perspective, from the perspective of cosmic love, have always been a lot more evolved. They have always been the beings that could love quite unconditionally, including humanity, right? Including other species. And so dolphins very much are at the forefront of the heart medicine of planet Earth. And as such, they're great harmonizers. They are not able to harmonize to a vast degree like whales, so their impact is usually smaller, right? So they can influence smaller ecosystems. But the frequency that they can create within those small ecosystems are off the charts. And because of that, even a small dolphin can harmonize the greater whole to a large degree just because of the frequencies they can generate within their own bodies. Of course, I know that probably the most interesting starseeds for this audience would be humanoid starseeds, right? So lots of humanoid Sirian starseeds incarnate on Earth. I figured we would dive a little bit deeper into why do Sirian Starseeds come to planet Earth at this pivotal moment in time? What is the collective mission for Sirian Starseeds? As well as, I figured it would be fun to dive into some commonalities of Sirian Starseeds that come in human bodies. How can you spot a Sirian Starseed? What differentiates them from the rest? Starting with the mission. Of course, Sirius, being the spiritual son of Gaia, has a collective spiritual mission as it relates to the planet Earth. So in a way, it is like an older sibling that is significantly more evolved. And it is greatest desire is to help the Earth through this transition into higher frequencies, higher consciousness, and to do so with as little blood lost as possible. So Sirius likes very peaceful transitions, very gentle transitions. No matter how you skin the cat, a transition from 3D to 5D, it's not a walk in the park. Let's just say it is on the more complex side of transitions. It usually is not an easy moment in time to synchronize, to harmonize, etc. So as a general rule, Sirian Starseeds come to Earth as teachers. That would be the boilerplate umbrella term that I would use. Not all teachers are created equal. Some Sirian Starseeds are here to lead by example. Some Sirian Starseeds are here to channel cosmic codes and information. Sirian Starseeds love diving into the mysteries, love looking at many, many, many layers of reality and understanding how they all fit together. Sirian Starseeds are not surface level thinkers. They go deep, just like the oceans, just like the waters of Sirius go very, very deep. And the star itself is known for its massive systems of underwater caverns as well. And so Sirius always looks for the hidden. It's it's in a way a nation, if I may say so, or a consciousness that is shrouded in mystery. It's very often veiled, like the veil of Isis, right? It's a bit hidden. That being said, Sirius as a star is renowned in the Milky Way for its libraries. Sirius has some of the most impressive libraries that are the most vast and the most, shall I say, sophisticated. And they span more, they're just more intricate than most other libraries. Sirius has probably the largest collection of preserved material, written material, or information, if you will, from other galaxies. So it's a beautiful repository of intergalactic wisdom. right? Sirians are obsessed with gathering knowledge. That's the one thing you need to know about Sirian Starseeds. No matter what they do, where they go, they are researchers. And make no mistake, every Sirian Starseed always, at all times, is transmitting their learnings back to the home base. That is just what they do, which is why you can think of them as our galactic librarians. Not necessarily in a boring, dry way, because Sirian Starseeds are amazing storytellers. And they are amazing storytellers because they have this history, they have this DNA of teaching within the galaxy and outside of the galaxy, teaching their ways. And they are extremely evolved. Sirius vibrates exceptionally high. And a lot of its energy as a star is concentrated around high dimensional spaces. So it, shall we say, identifies as a high vibrational star. Because of that, it has a lot of missionary souls that travel to the far corners of the galaxy with the teachings. Usually it's ascension teachings of some sort. It's the teachings of coming to wholeness internally and externally. And Sirians specifically like a challenge. The bigger the challenge, the more Sirians you're going to attract. So hence there are plenty of Sirian Starseeds currently living on planet Earth because this is a challenging time. As great teachers, they kind of have it innate inside of them to be able to feel the local ecosystem very deeply and really connect to the local population. And because of that, they've gotten good at storytelling, and they've gotten good at explaining really complicated concepts in very seamless, simple means. Because they are used to the fact that they usually are preaching to lower vibrational beings, and as such, the level of sophistication is not at the same degree. And so they've gotten really good at parables, they've gotten really good at laying things out in ways that are very easy to digest, understand, and memorize. What is true? And what are some of the common traits of Sirian Starseeds? Their minds move very, very fast. So they have a knack for processing information. Their minds move fast and they can talk faster than a lot of other people. They usually can process more information per ounce, if that makes sense, or per second. They are very likely to be engaged in multiple activities at the same time. So doing 2 or 3 things at the same time. They're a bit restless. They like action in a way, right? They get bored very easily. And so they like to keep themselves engaged. Intellectual stimulation is very important for Sirian Starseeds. And I would even say that for Sirian Starseeds to be in a relationship with somebody who is not their intellectual equal is particularly problematic, even more so than most other people or beings or starseeds. So they're always looking for that intellectual equal, somebody who stimulates them mentally and who could show them the next frontier. The most fundamental question, by the way, for a Sirian Starseed is what's next? They are obsessive and obsessed researchers, right? So they're always curious. Curiosity is not what killed the Sirian Starseed, let me tell you. They have really mastered this game of curiosity, and it's like a national trait for them. It's a personal trait for them. They take great pride in being very curious. They also have a very interesting and unique relationship with this concept of truth, both understanding that there is no such thing as the ultimate truth, and the only final truth is how the creator or source sees or perceives truth, because everything is ultimately only a perspective. And yet, they really love gathering different perspectives. Because of that, Sirian Starseeds are actually incredible diplomats. They are incredible peacemakers, and they're incredible communicators. And it is because they have studied concepts and they're used to understanding concepts from so many different angles that it's very easy for them to, again, either see eye to eye or convince other people of their point of view. So they're masters of conviction. They're great orators because on Sirius, everything that is related to sound has been profoundly studied and understood. So anything that is related to the voice, vocal cords, Sirian Starseeds are incredible singers. They are incredible public speakers, like I said. They could be amazing TV presenters. Anywhere that, the throat chakra, the Vishuddha, is overactive, that is when you would see a Sirian starseed. They're usually not the shrinking violets, so there is a great deal of confidence and almost like a bit of a regal kind of aura around them. Not to say like an air of superiority, but it can come across as that way. Like that's maybe a bit on the shadow of a Sirian starseed because they tend to know more than other people. And by the way, a lot of Sirian starseeds come with pre-built claircognizance, clear knowing. It's just something that they just sometimes just know the answer. They cannot tell you why or how. A lot of them, like almost a disproportionate amount of Sirian starseeds are going to be claircognizant to a great degree. That gives them a bit of a level of superiority because they judge people by their intellect. And if you're the claircognizant one in the room, somehow you always know better, which is why sometimes Sirian starseeds can be perceived as a bit standoffish or a bit arrogant, maybe, compared to some others. Now, Sirian starseeds are the beings that have probably the most reverence to knowledge, to gnosis, to knowing things. These are the beings that are obsessively studying things. They love learning. Now, they love gathering information, structuring information, imparting information on others. That is very much a value. They hate mundane conversations. Like you cannot catch them dead doing small talk. Like water cooler talk, not their thing. They don't have a lot of patience for that. Sirian starseeds, don't have a lot of patience, period. They're a bit of an impatient starseed kind. Another interesting thing about Sirians is that despite the fact that they are very used to water as an element, which is not to say that 100% of Sirius is covered with water, but let's just say that it's a native element to them, and which is why they're also connected to the Divine Mother. They're not necessarily very good at speaking about their emotions, which is why they may come across as slightly less emotional than, call them the Pleiadians, for instance, or a lot of other starseeds. It's because in water or in water-based worlds, emotions, they are transmitted intuitively and telepathically. In other words, you kind of wear your emotions on your sleeve and everybody kind of already knows what you're feeling. And so Sirians don't have to develop a muscle of telling others how they actually feel because it's like a known fact. And so for them, simple things like saying, I love you, or really owning up to their emotions can come as a hard challenge on Earth. And that is a bit difficult because it's almost like if they love somebody, they almost like expect the other person to just know it. Sirian starseeds can also be harder to understand because they don't like informing before they do something. So they're a little bit, I don't want to say self-centered because that's not what it is, but they kind of like do first, ask questions later kind of people. And it's very interesting. On the one hand, they're very likely to bend the rules. Like they don't necessarily always respect authority unless it's an authority that in their mind is more evolved than they are and smarter than they are. That is how they think of authority. But they don't really take well to human authority. That being said, they are sticklers for things like justice and things like truth. So very often with Sirian starseeds, you're going to see them as fighters for the justice, which is why you would always actually, not always, but very often, activists that are fighting for the earth, or like to clean up the waters, or like to save the animals, like a lot of them are Sirian starseeds just because they're fighters for justice. And it hurts them deeply when like local ecosystems are being polluted, and specifically anything that is water related, that really hurts them because they're innately, it's like their hearts are connected to water. So they feel it quite deeply. At the same time, Sirian starseeds, despite the fact that they're not really good at vocalizing their emotions, they are very often empaths. Again, because of the same exact reason. It's a water-based world, so emotions are extremely well understood. So they're like scanning their surroundings quite naturally and like feeling people's hearts. Like they're feeling their almost like their entire story. And it's very easy for them to understand other people's emotions. Doesn't quite work that way in reverse. It's a bit like they have a bit of a poker face, but they can feel everybody else. There is a bit of an aura of this coolness, like almost like a cold exterior with Sirians. It's a bit of a cooler temperature. It's cooler waters. And so sometimes when you talk to them again, it may come across as like there's a barrier. It's not like a very easy thing to become friends with a Sirian Starseed. Like there's a bit of it's like they're scanning you and like wanting to make sure that you're a kindred spirit. So it's not they have barriers. Like there are barriers you're going to have to pass before you're going to be in the inner circle, so to say. Sirians, though, they're very loyal. So once you're in, you're in. And very often they, if they befriend you, they would remain your friend in like future lifetimes. Like they love bonds that like run the test of time. So they're extremely loyal. And they're extremely loyal in relationships once they find the one. You pretty much are not going to find like a Sirian that would cheat or something. That being said, very often Sirian starseeds have a hard time on Earth finding a pair or finding a couple because their bar for their partner is so high. Sirians are very often perfectionists. And because of that, they require the same from their partner. Like the bar is high. And they're looking usually for a full package. It's not just one thing. They're like, okay, it needs to be an intellectual equal, it needs to be somebody who can understand the depth of my emotions that I'm hiding and be on the same page with me as far as my direction in life, and also be extremely spiritual because all Sirian starseeds are spiritual. One way or another, they find their way there. And it can be like a tough predicament to find yourself in. So very often Sirian starseeds struggle to find a partner, struggle in relationships if they are with a partner and the partner is not meeting their needs. And that's very much a constant refrain. Sirian starseeds are strict parents. Again, that perfectionist, they're strict parents. It's almost like their bar for their child is higher than is reasonable. So just something, if you're a Sirian starseed, just know that about yourself and maybe go easy on the kid. They deserve it. Planet Earth is hard enough. Spirituality in the Sirian starseeds is like front and center. Very often they have spiritual missions, spiritual callings. Enough of them are going to channel information, and they're obsessed with like recording all of that information, teaching that information, disseminating that information. They are uniquely comfortable in front of a camera, usually very comfortable around people and around crowds. And again, it is because their emotional bodies are extremely attuned to the frequency of the crowd, and they can pacify crowds or like cocoon them, almost like hug them with that love. Like they are really, really good at creating states for a large amount of people. So a Sirian starseed walking into a party can shift the vibration of the party. And that is very interesting. Sirian starseeds are often innovators in spirituality. So if I don't know, the universe needs somebody to channel a new modality or something else new and different, Sirians very often volunteer for those kinds of missions. Now, of course, all starseeds from Sirius are drawn to Egypt and Egyptian mysteries. So very often they would either travel there all the time or just like be obsessed with watching movies or like learning more. So there's that innate connection to the pyramids. They love the mysteries of the Sphinx. Sirian starseeds love gems, colored gems like sapphires, rubies, emeralds, not because they love luxury, although they do love luxury, but because in in their world, it is a sign of initiation. There are these initiation rays that are named by the jewels. So there's the sapphire ray and the ruby ray, and for them it is almost like their priesthood. That's what they remember, priesthood and like wisdom to feel like. And so very often they would be attracted to these colored gemstones, even just like to own, right? Like to wear as jewelry, not even remembering that it actually means a certain level of spiritual initiation on their planet. What else do I need to tell? There's so much. There's so much information. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take 3 questions from the collective. Anything that you guys wanted to know about Sirian Starseeds, I'm ready to receive the question. The first question is, how are Sirian Starseeds different from Arcturian Starseeds? Okay, a bit random, and I'm not sure how I can quickly answer that. But let's just say that Arcturian starseeds are a lot more obsessed at architecting and innovation in a systemic sense. Arcturian starseeds are here to build systems. They're here to build networks, including of people, grids, and they have this system-based, architect-based thinking. They are like the scientist, if you will. Arcturian starseeds are obsessed with scale. They like large-scale operations. They don't like small-scale anything. But in a way, an Arcturian starseed is a bit more grounded in the material compared to a Sirian starseed, because a Sirian starseed is very often a very spiritual seeker and essentially somebody who values connecting to source above anything else. An Arcturian starseed usually loves building systems above anything else and loves scale. And that is the fundamental difference. In other words, for a Sirian starseed, they can get lost in just connecting through their channel and like learning about the world and recording that information. And that is a delectable pastime. Whereas for an Arcturian, it's applied knowledge. It's not knowledge for the sake of knowledge. It's not knowledge that's going to be in the library stored away somewhere. An Arcturian starseed is like, I'm going to download something because I need it to build X, Y, and Z. And I would say that is probably the most fundamental difference. Now, it's like compare and contrast. Like I can give you probably hundreds of different ways to differentiate between the two because they're not really all that similar, despite I would say like the similarity is probably in the fact that both are quite cerebral and both are they're like getting to the crux of the issue. They don't like surface-based thinking. So they are each other's intellectual equals, which makes them amazing partners. But let's just say that they're operating from a different place. Sirians are all about connectedness with, higher powers, and in a way that they're like walking transmission towers, and they're very much sovereign and like vertical about that vertical alignment. Whereas, so in a way, they're like vertical beings, and Arcturians are like horizontal because of like they want to hug the world with like their invention and with the network that they just came up with. And in a way, Sirian starseeds are really good at like igniting change or like shining the light on someone or something, like being the light bearers, being the trailblazers. If they have an Arcturian brother or sister next to them, the Arcturians can really help anchor that into the fabric of the earth. Arcturians are no strangers to the grids in ways that Sirians wouldn't even know how to approach the grids of the earth on a macro scale. They're able to do that maybe on a micro scale, but on a macro scale, they need an architect to make things happen. I hope that answers the question. I'm going to take another question from the collective about the Sirian starseeds. How do you know if you're a Sirian starseed? If you've been listening to this recording and your body has been giving you weird sensations such as heat or tingles, or all of a sudden you just get massive waves of energy, it's probably your Sirian Starseed brothers and sisters who have been communicating to you that you are one of the tribe. They often say that Sirian starseeds love water. It's not always the case. You may still have a ton of trauma associated with water, but let's just say that if you don't love swimming, at least you like looking at water and engaging with water. So I would say that is true. Connection to Egypt, not to be discounted. This love and thirst for knowledge and that idea of like knowledge or learning never stops. A Sirian starseed is very often can be found either reading or writing or using their voice. So they're very, very dominant in their throat centers. Again, you can find them somewhere in the library or sticking their, eyes in the book. They love going to Barnes & Noble if they're American. They just love the physicality and like the physical representation of knowledge. Or just reading stories. Like they're big on storytelling. Like they have this unlimited capacity for like reading stories, listening to stories. Voice is extremely important. So they usually like music. They usually like musical theater. They usually they're comfortable with clairaudience, so they love audiobooks. Like they're completely comfortable with that, like voices, right? Again, the song of the siren, the song of the mermaid, that's a Sirian concept, right? So they're very comfortable with singing. They can sweet talk you into something. Like they're really great at convincing. All of those things are examples of what a starseed from Sirius, the qualities that they would display. And they also carry themselves a bit like nobility. So it's usually like either like an upright spine or there's something about them. Sometimes the bone structure is very thin in certain places. So they look a bit aristocratic, at least maybe not in their entirety, but there are some aristocratic features. And they tend to be on the taller, thinner side, although that is not always the case. I hope this helps. All right, last but not least, any other questions that you wanted to ask about Sirian starseeds? I am here to receive the question. The question is this: if you are a Sirian starseed traveling to Egypt, do you have any way that you can get more access to the mysteries than somebody who is not connected to the lands of Egypt? The answer is yes, and thank you for asking. There is a veil specifically around the pyramids of Giza, as well as some other artifacts around the Giza Plateau, artifacts and places of power. And it's a white veil that can specifically be lifted by the Sirian Starseeds. So if you travel to the Giza Plateau and you're a Sirian Starseed, you can ask the Sphinx specifically, because the Sphinx is the guardian of those lands, to let you beyond the veil, or let you behind the veil, if you will. And usually what would be required from you is an imprint of your right hand. That is what would give you the access code. So you would imagine, in your mind's eye, once you're already on the Giza Plateau, you would imagine standing in front of the Sphinx, or by the way, standing right next to the Sphinx is, if you don't have to imagine it, if you're really standing in front of the Sphinx, that's perfect. So you'd be looking Sphinx straight in the eye, and you would make a request stating that I am a Sirian Starseed to the best of my knowledge, and I would love to get access to the Sirian mysteries. And then you would be asked to, instead of providing the fingerprints, you provide the full palm prints, right? And if indeed the veil recognizes you as a Sirian Starseed, it's going to get lifted. And it's almost like you're going to be having a completely different, totally different experience in Egypt compared to a normal tourist, just because you have access to the deep lore of that place. I hope that you enjoy. And of course, the Great Pyramids are going to open up very, very differently for you. Alrighty, my darlings, please let me know in the comments how this has landed for you. What are some of the things that maybe most surprised you? What are the things that you totally resonate with? And also let me know what other, if at all, what other star seeds you want me to make similar videos about, and I will consider it. Sending you so much love. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.